In 1972, a man by the name of Herbert Mullin believed that there was going to be a deadly earthquake throughout Northern California. Now, why did he think this? You might be wondering. Well, because the voices in his head told him so. And the voices in his head not only told him that there would be this deadly earthquake, the voices also told him in order to stall this earthquake, in order to stop it from happening, he had to murder 13 people. Was this a case of a man who was so mentally ill that he believed all he could do was murder? Or was this a case of an evil monster who used his mental health as an excuse to execute 13 people? This is the terrifying, horrifying case of Herbert Mullin.
He cut her open and pulled out all of her intestines and laid them out.
They are to blame for causing me to commit the crimes. I said my prayers every day. I went to church every Sunday. I made sure that I went to confession at least once a month. Between October 13th, 1972 and February 13th, 1973, I did in fact murder 13 people.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah. Today we are covering a lesser known case to many, and that is the case of Herbert Mullin. This guy, I don't even know what I can say, because was he genuinely mentally ill and that is why he killed? Or did he really use his mental illness as an excuse to murder? We're going to discuss it all today. Before I do get into the case, if you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I am a certified yapper, and one day I decided I'm going to hop on the internet and I'm going to yap about true crime, hopefully find a community of people like myself who are interested in the same thing, and I think I found you. If true crime is your jam, then I highly suggest that you subscribe, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you twice a week, every single week, on a Wednesday and Sunday. If you are a regular here, if you are an OG, you already know the drill. Get down in the likes, get down in the comments, engage with this video in some way, to help get me out into the YouTube algorithm. It would mean the world to me. Any details you need regarding me, myself and I, they will all be listed in the description down below, so if there's anything you want to know, it should all be down there for you. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying, devastating case of Herbert Mullin. I have to admit, I have not been this excited about a case in a long time. Let's be honest, my Chris Watts video, complete flop. I get it. People didn't want to watch it because it's a very overdone case, and honestly, I get it. I was proud of the video in the sense that I spent a lot of time on it. I wanted to get clips and things in it, so I was so proud of the video and really excited to get it out, but it did flop because people know the case. But because it was requested, I just wanted to make sure I covered it for the people who requested it. But today, if this video flops, I don't know why, right? Because this is a case that I've not seen anyone cover, and we owe it all to my dad. So in the comments, please say, thank you, Ali. Or if you want to be formal, his name's Alan. But he gave me this case and I was putting it off, and then I was like, actually, you know what? Why not? And I dove into it and I am so excited. This case, was the guy evil? Or was he just extremely mentally ill? We're going to dive into it today. I want to know thoughts, feelings, theories, opinions, all down below in the comments, because honestly, I'm kind of torn, because he was mentally ill, but at the same time there was premeditation, or was there? No giving spoilers, but kind of feel like there was. But I'm just so excited. We've got a blue top on, means one thing. We're going to do a blue makeup look, and I'm buzzing. And I haven't even had my daily dose of caffeine yet, so this energy is just pure excitement for this video. My lips are feeling like the Sahara Desert, so just let me get some lip balm on. Much better. So Herbert Mullin, he was born on April the 18th of 1947 in Salinas, California, and April the 18th, I'm April the 10th. Is this guy an Aries? I mean, I'll have it on screen because I always work it out after the video, but there's a chance that he's in Aries. And I'm sorry. Also, if you had to guess what star sign I am, would you guess an Aries, or do you think I fit in with like another star sign? Everyone that I've met, they always assume that I am an Aries or a Sagittarius, which is funny because my dad, he's a Sagittarius. But yeah, it was a bit of a tangent. I always wonder what star sign people would think I am based on my personality. You know, Herbert, he was born... Herbert.
Herbervlinger. Bert Herngave. Irv Hermlinger. Bing Livehanger. Livelink. Bert Herkern.
As a Scottish person, I'm going to say Herbert. Herbert. It sounds funny. It sounds funnier every time I say it. Herbert. But he was born into a very normal, loving family. There was no signs of abuse. It wasn't documented. It wasn't reported. Herbert himself, he didn't ever mention any abuse within his household. His father was a really stern man. Like, he would have rules that he would enforce within the home, but he was in no way abusive to his family. He just liked things the way he liked them, and he wanted his family to follow in good footsteps. Now, just before Herbert turned 5 years old, him and his family, they would move to San Francisco, where he would attend San Lorenzo High School. And let me tell you, Herbert, he was very popular, not only with his peers, but also with his teachers. Like, he worked really hard, he applied himself, he was dedicated. Every subject that he participated in, he gave 100%. He was said to be quite academically gifted, and he would get himself some really good grades. And at the age of 16, he was voted in the school as most likely to succeed. Which, you know, as the case goes on, like, it's a shame that he could have been great, but things happen to Herbert Berg. Whilst Herbert Mullin would excel within his school, there was some early warning signs that were subtle yet alarming. And the most worrying sign that people noticed within Herbert Mullin was his deep-seated paranoia, something that would only worsen as time went on. So like I said, Herbert, he's pretty popular. He has a lot of friends within school, and it did seem that his favourite aspect of school was the socialisation, because although school sucks balls, you get to see your best friends every single day. And Herbert loved to go into school and spend time with his friends, but in particular his best friend, Dean Richardson. Now, he would be with Dean in school, out of school, on the weekends. Dean was just like his bestie boo, and they spent so much time together. The boys were basically inseparable. They were somewhat of a double act. Like, you never really seen one without the other, sort of joined at the hip. And this is why, when very shortly after finishing school, Herbert's life would fall apart when his best friend Dean Richardson was killed in a horrific car accident. This absolutely broke him. Like, the person who he loved the most and who he spent the most time with was just ripped away from him. Now, Herbert Mullin, he really struggled with this so much. He struggled to accept that it had happened. He struggled to come to terms with Dean's death. And because of this, he built a shrine for Dean within his bedroom. And not only this, but he had started reading into reincarnation and how it works. And he thought, if he had the shrine for Dean, maybe he could bring Dean back. These obsessions became so unhealthy and so consuming for him that it was all that he thought about. And it is believed by many professionals that this accident and the death of Dean, this might have been the trigger for the onset of his schizophrenia. So at just the age of 19, Herbert Mullin, he starts getting into drugs, okay? And he is using drugs constantly. This would be cannabis and LSD, which just seemed to be a horrifying combination for someone like him, who already suffers with paranoia, anxiety. Like, this caused him to spiral so quick. So time goes on, and Herbert, he is a regular user of both cannabis and LSD, and he would take them both at the same time in conjunction with each other. And this is where you would witness this alarming shift taking place within this man's mental health and his mental stability. The constant use of these drugs just worsened any symptoms that Herbert had exhibited before. And by the age of 21, his family and his friends, they had started to notice the warning signs of schizophrenia. Now, I do want to do a really high level overview of schizophrenia and what it is. I will say that I haven't been affected directly by schizophrenia. It's not something I suffer with. No one in my family suffers with it. So I'm not really connected to this mental illness in any way. So if you are and you know more about this illness and how it works, please let me know down below. I'm just going off of what I've researched on the internet, so you might have a better understanding of this illness than I do. Anything that you feel is important to the case today and the disease itself, please let us know in the comments. But schizophrenia is a very serious mental illness, and this condition affects significantly how people think, feel, and behave. It can result in a mix of hallucinations, delusions, disorganised behaviour, and also disorganised thinking. So the hallucinations that people experience can be them seeing or hearing things that everyone else around them cannot see or hear. And the delusions, these cause firm beliefs about things that are just simply not true. Now, I didn't even know this before, but people who are suffering from schizophrenia, it obviously affects how they think and feel and behave, but they can also experience tastes and smells and feelings and sensations that also aren't there, and I had no idea about that. These things that they taste, smell, or feel only exist in their mind. It's not actually something that they should be feeling. Now, Herbert's family and friends, they did point out to him that they're seeing these alarming symptoms and behaviours and disordered thinking within him, and they believe that he needs help. Now, Herbert, when he hears this from his family and he sees how worried they are, he voluntarily admits himself to a treatment facility to try and see if he can be treated and if these symptoms can be alleviated in some way. Now, unfortunately, Herbert, he would only last in this facility for 6 weeks, and upon leaving treatment, he was given a poor prognosis, which meant that the health professionals, they believed that there was very, very little to no chance that he would be able to recover. And it honestly breaks my heart when people are given like poor prognoses and that they believe that they're almost a lost cause and that there's no point in them trying to get better because they've been told there's very little chance of them recovering. Like, it must be really hard not only for that person to hear, but also for their family to hear, believing that the person they love might never live a normal life. Now, Herbert, over the course of several years, he would enter different treatment facilities and programs, involuntary and voluntary, to try and get better, but Herbert would never ever stick to recommended medications or recommended treatments. He wouldn't commit to therapy sessions or group therapy sessions, and it seemed like although this man was sometimes volunteering to enter these facilities, this man also had no motivation to actually stick to the treatment and see it through. And because of what seemed like his unwillingness to try, his prognosis would go from poor to grave, basically meaning that this is going to have a significant effect on his life, and this would take years off of his life. There was basically no chance of him recovering, and they believed that he could be a danger to himself. Now, it was around this time that Herbert had started confiding in family, friends, especially his co-workers, and he would tell them that he was hearing voices in his head. By the age of just 23 years old, Herbert was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic by 3 different doctors, and all 3 of these doctors said that his schizophrenia was accelerated by the consistent use of LSD and cannabis. But Herbert, he's out here having a jolly good time when he's on the LSD and cannabis, and he doesn't want to give it up. So, the foot is on the gas, the acceleration is being pressed, and this guy's just going for it. So by 1972, Herbert Mullin, he had moved back in with his parents in Felton, California in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And as we know, his birthday is April the 18th. And in case you didn't know, April the 18th was the anniversary of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and Herbert really seemed to fixate on this. He believed that because his birthday and the anniversary of this earthquake landed on the same day, this meant something big to him. Also in 1972, which this really just does not help Herbert whatsoever, but a mathematician, they had predicted that in January the 4th of 1973, the San Andreas Fault would once again unleash a deadly earthquake in Northern California. Herbert hears this and he's like, holy crap, I need to stop this. This is up to me. My birthday's in the same day as the anniversary. I have been called upon to stop this from happening. Now, the voices in Herbert's mind, they were getting louder over time, right? He's really struggling to try and block them out. And these voices were telling him that the only way to stall this earthquake was human sacrifice. Now, Herbert believed that the Vietnam War, that had caused so much blood to be shed from the Americans, it had caused so many American deaths, that this had been able to stall the earthquake. But because the American involvement within the war had started to die down by late 1972, these voices told Herbert that not enough blood was being shed to nature, and therefore nature was going to rebel, unleashing another deadly earthquake. Unless Herbert himself shed blood and stalled this further. That is a lot to put on one man. Like, thinking one man is going to save Northern California, like, come on. It's just cruel. So Herbert at this point, he truly believes and is fixated on the fact that he must kill, and more importantly, he must kill enough people to stall that earthquake for as long as possible. And not only that, like, Herbert's hearing voices, right? But he starts to get telepathic messages from his father. Like, he's sitting in the same room as his dad, and he said that his dad would, like, look at him and send him messages. And these messages were telling him that he must go out and kill innocent people within Northern California to stall this earthquake. But Herbert had stated, we human beings, through history of the world, have protected our continents from cataclysmic earthquakes by murder. In other words, a minor natural disaster avoids a major natural disaster. It's not sounding good. It is not sounding good, my friends. This guy, he's going to go to the extreme. And it would be on October the 13th of 1972 when Herbert Mullin's horrifying murder spree would begin. So 55-year-old Lawrence White, better known as Whitey, he was hitchhiking along the road on October the 13th when he caught Herbert Mullin's eye. Now, Herbert Mullin had stated that the reason in particular that Lawrence White had caught his eye was because he believed that Lawrence White was Jonah from the Bible. And not only this, but when he seen Jonah from the Bible, he said that Jonah, Lawrence White, had telepathically messaged him and said, hey man, pick me up and throw me over the boat. Kill me so that the others will be saved. Herbert Mullin receives this message from Lawrence White, who he believes is Jonah. And with this, Herbert Mullin, he drove over to Lawrence White, parks slightly in front of him, gets out and pretends that he's having car trouble. With this, Lawrence comes over and he's, trying to see what the issue is, see if he can help Herbert Mullin. Herbert Mullin then brings out a baseball bat and beats this man to death before throwing him down the side of the road. See, this is where I struggle, but it could just be the fact that I don't know enough about schizophrenia. But if he really believed that he received this message from Lawrence White, if he truly believed that Lawrence White was Jonah from the Bible and he got this message to kill him, would he act so suspiciously and so calculated to commit the murder? That's where I struggle. Like, this guy he premeditated it in a way, and he pretended to have car troubles instead of just walking up and being like, listen, message received, I'm going to kill you now. This is where I struggle. Then on October the 24th, Herbert is wasting no time. This is when he would commit his second murder, and his reasoning for this one was to test his hypothesis that the environment was being rapidly polluted, and also to follow his father's command of committing another sacrifice. Apologies, I had to, as always, do the makeup off camera slightly because I was trying to do the case and do the makeup at the same time, and I just would be like, and then he... like that, and I would just stop talking. So I figured get the eye out the way, well, the first bit of the eye out the way, and then continue. So Mary Guilfoyle, she was a student from Cabrillo College, and on the day of October the 24th, 1972, she was running late for an appointment when she would be spotted by Herbert Mullin. And I honestly hate how it always seems to work in the favour of the murderer in these instances, because Mary that day is running late for an appointment. Herbert Mullin pulls up alongside her and asks if she needs a ride, which of course she accepts because she's already running late. She's stressed out. Getting this ride means that she gets there on time. So it worked in Mullin's favour. Now, once Mary got into the vehicle and Mullin was driving her, very, very suddenly, he just lunges across the seat and he stabs her directly into the chest. After this, he then goes on to disembowel Mary's corpse because he wanted to examine her organs for evidence regarding his beliefs in pollution. And I know this man is mentally ill, I get it. It just seems so extreme that he would disembowel her and examine her organs, but I guess in that state, maybe that's what he thinks he really has to do. I don't know. But it's scary that if this is all down to mental illness, that this could cause delusions so strong that people would murder. Mary's body was then dumped. It was basically scattered along the side of the road, and it wouldn't even be located until February the following year. So after committing these horrifying murders, it would be this point where Herbert actually starts to have some doubts regarding his father's commands. And it's like, you couldn't have had these doubts 2 murders ago, like before you already killed 2 people, you couldn't have doubted it then. But because he was having these doubts and having these fears that maybe what he was hearing was incorrect, he decided that he wanted to attend church so he could go to confession. So he decides to attend St Mary's Catholic Church in Los Gatos on November the 2nd of 1972. And like I said, the reason he was attending was so he could go to confession, so he could go to a priest and confide and confess about what he's done. But Herbert, he wanders into the church, he goes into confession, and this is where he would speak to Father Henry Tomei. Now, Herbert is chatting away to Father Henry and he's saying about these doubts that he's having. And then according to him, Father Henry Tomei volunteers to be his next sacrifice. He told Herbert Mullin that he shouldn't stop because this is for the greater good.
All about the greater good.
The greater good. How can this be for the greater good? The greater good. How can this be for the greater good? The greater good. Shut it!
He flat out says that Henry Tomei was like, take me next if you want, like, it's for a good cause, why not? So Mullin, he proceeds to then attack Father Henry Tomei. He's kicking him, he's punching him, he then stabs him to death and leaves him to bleed out in this confessional in the church. So Herbert Mullin at this point, right, he's like, this is a bit much. Like, I think I want to go clean cut. I still want to, murder for the greater good, of course, but I would like to do it with permission. I would like to do it legally. So he decides that he is going to apply to join the US Marine Corps, and this doesn't really go too well because they need him to sign his criminal record. But Herbert Mullin refuses because he doesn't want anyone snooping around his criminal record. And if I was him, neither would I. Because of this, he was barred entry and he's thinking, well, I tried to go straight, I tried to go clean cut and basically have permission to murder, but they didn't let me in, so I'm going to continue God's mission on my own. By the start of 1973, Herbert Mullin, right, he's completely stopped taking drugs. No more LSD, no more cannabis. He just wants to live a clean life, but still murder, but a clean life. Now, when he stops taking these drugs, he starts to think to himself, the reason that I've been led down this dark path is all to do with my substance abuse. This wasn't the life I chose. And now I've committed bad things because I was addicted to drugs. So he decides the very first person who introduced him to drugs has to pay the price. So Herbert Mullin, he decides that he is going to locate a man by the name of Jim Giannira. Jim was a former friend at the school that Mullin had attended, and he was the one who very firstly introduced Mullin to cannabis. Mullin believes this introduction to cannabis led to the LSD and led to my drug abuse. So Mullin, he decides to drive to a very remote area of Santa Cruz, and this remote area he had driven to was the area that he remembered Jim living in. Now, he knew that Jim had lived in this area, but he couldn't quite remember what house it was, so he was kind of thinking, I'm just going to go to whatever house I need to until they tell me where Jim is. So the first house he went to was occupied by a woman by the name of Kathleen Francis, who just so happened to be friends with Jim and Joan Giannira. So Mullin explained to Kathleen that he was looking to reconnect with an old friend, but he couldn't quite remember what house he had lived in. And Kathleen thinks that she's doing this good thing for an old friend. She points him to Jim's house, which is just down the road in a cabin. So as you can imagine, Herbert Mullin, he storms away down to Jim's cabin, and once he gets there and Jim opens the door, all hell would break loose. Mullin is demanding to know why Jim had put him onto cannabis. Why did he give him it in the first place? Why did he want to ruin his life? And Jim basically responds to Mullin and says, listen, I offered you, but you didn't need to take it. Like, you took it through your own free will. Don't try and blame me for your drug addiction. And Herbert did not like this answer. This was not the answer that he was looking for. And this infuriated him. Herbert Mullin, he turned round to Jim Giannira and he point blank shot him. Now, Jim, he is crawling along the floor trying to get away from Herbert Mullin. He's trying to get to the bathroom to tell his wife to lock the door. But before he could reach the bathroom, Mullin got there first, and he would shoot Jim's wife, Joan, dead right on the spot. So once Herbert Mullin has finished killing Jim and Joan, for whatever sick reason, he decides that he's going to go back to the home of Kathleen Francis, where he would proceed to murder Kathy and her 2 children. So he would kill Kathy, her 4-year-old son Damon Francis, and then her 9-year-old son David Hughes. He shot all 3 of them and then stabbed each of them multiple times. Overkill. Like, there is no reason for that. Like, I know he's saying he's on his mission and everything, but there is no reason for the overkill. Like, if you've shot them, leave them. Now, police believe that when they had seen these murders, they thought it was drug-related. The murders of Jim, Joan, Kathleen, and her 2 children. Drug-related. Right? They hadn't actually connected the fact that the murder of the priest was also connected to the murders in the cabins. Even the murder of the hitchhikers, they hadn't linked them to the murder of the priest or the murder in the cabins either. They were treating these all as isolated incidents. Then on February the 10th of 1973, Herbert Mullin, he was hiking in the state park in Santa Cruz, and whilst he was there, he would come across a group of teenagers who were camping illegally. And honestly, I was kind of hoping that Herbert was in the state park hiking to be at one with nature, to de-stress, decompress and relax. But he wouldn't be. So this bunch of teenagers, it was a group of teenage boys. So the first one is Robert Spector, who was 18, Brian Scott Card, who was 19, David Olliker, who was 18, and then Mark Drybelbis, who was only 15 years old. And of course, because these young boys are camping illegally, Herbert, he's going to use this to his advantage. So he approaches the young boys who are in their tent. He tells them that he's a park ranger, that they're here illegally, and that they need to leave immediately. He's telling the boys, you're polluting the forest, you must leave, like, you can't be here, you're causing all this pollution. And the boys are looking at him like, what? They weren't scared of this man. They thought this man was a bit of a joke. So they're like, off, we're trying to camp, get away from our tent, and they actually like shooed him away, like how you would shoo an animal, like shoo. I don't know how you shoo an animal. It just occurred to me as I was doing that, I've never shoot an animal. So I don't know how you say it. And very surprisingly to me, Herbert backs off. He goes away. Like, he leaves. But he would come back. Yeah, he would come back, and he wasn't happy. So the next day he comes back and he is absolutely furious because they're polluting this forest and they shoot him. So he walks up to this group of teenage boys who are just trying to enjoy themselves. I know they're camping illegally, they shouldn't be, but what harm are they really doing? Herbert Mullin goes up to their tent and he proceeds to shoot all 4 of these young boys in the head, killing them instantly. So he had shot them with a .22 caliber pistol, but they had a .22 caliber rifle on them, which he decides, I'm going to take that as well, alongside $20 that they had. And devastatingly, Herbert Mullin, he still wasn't done. He wasn't satisfied yet. He felt as though he had to keep on killing. He had to keep stalling this earthquake. And so later that week, Herbert Mullin would encounter a 72-year-old man by the name of Fred Abbey Perez, who was just out in his garden. So this man, he's just in his garden, he's doing a bit of garden work, he's just enjoying himself. Herbert Mullin drives by, he sees this man out in his garden, and then he does like a little U-turn up the street so he can come back down and murder this old man. So Herbert stops his car alongside this elderly man. He pops his rifle out the hood of the car and he shoots the man right in the heart. After he shot this old man, he then just speeds off, thinking that he's done this incognito. But he hasn't. Because Fred Abbey Perez's neighbour has seen everything, and he took down the license plate of the vehicle that Herbert Mullin was driving. This neighbour, he contacts the police right away. He describes what he's seen. He tells the police, I've got the license plate here, hands it over, describes the vehicle, describes Herbert Mullin, and within minutes, police have dispatched this across their radio. They know exactly who it is that they're looking out for. And just minutes later, Herbert Mullin would be located just sitting in his vehicle. He was arrested on the spot. Sitting next to him in the vehicle was a .22 caliber pistol that he had used to murder the people in the cabins. This is going to help police link it together, because right now they've got different murders, different weapons, different victim type. It doesn't really line up. But now they see that Herbert Mullin has more than one weapon that he is utilising to commit these murders. So as I was saying, police hadn't been able to tie all these murders together because they couldn't distinguish a pattern between them all. There was different weapons, different modus operandi. None of the victims were the same. The ages were different, the sex, the race, everything about them, nothing aligned. And also what made it really hard for them to distinguish who this murderer could be was the fact that Edmund Kemper, he was also operating near this exact area at the exact same time. Now, the Santa Cruz County DA, they would charge Herbert Mullin with 10 of 13 of the murders. And Mullin would be set for trial on July the 30th of 1973. Now, I will say at this point, Herbert Mullin, he wasn't really trying to say that he was innocent. He did admit to the crimes, and so his trial was going to focus on whether or not he was legally sane at the time of the murders. Now, the prosecution, they had stated that because Herbert Mullin had went to lengths to cover his tracks, because he had showed premeditation, it would show that he was legally sane at the time of these murders. He knew what he was doing. He knew that it was wrong, and that's why he was covering it up. Whereas Mullin's defence, they had come in and said that he was murdering because he thought it was for good reason. He thought it was for the greater good. They argued that he wasn't a bad guy, he was simply just a very mentally unwell man, and that there's no way he was legally sane when he committed these murders. So on August the 19th of 1973, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury would find Herbert Mullin guilty of first-degree murder for the murders of Jim Giannera and also Kathy Francis. Now, the reason he was found guilty of first-degree murder in these cases was because the jury believed that these murders exhibited premeditation, which Yeah, he literally tracked down Jim Giannina. And I also think if we come at it from a stance that this guy was just evil and that it wasn't his mental illness causing him to commit these crimes, I would then argue that he murdered Kathy because he had asked Kathy where Jim lives, and then if it got back to Kathy that Jim had been murdered, Kathy would have told the police who they had seen. Herbert Mullin. I think, in my opinion, I believe that he has killed Kathy and her children, so there was no witnesses to the murder of Jim and Joan Giannina. Mic drop. That's what I think. But what do I know? I just sit and yap away to a camera. He was then found guilty of second-degree murder for the other 8 counts, and the reason for this is because the jury had believed that these murders were impulse murders. They weren't premeditated. And it's actually insane, but Herbert Mullin, he was only 26 years old when he was convicted of 10 murders. That's my age. 26. What? So the DA, they would also charge Herbert Mullin with the second-degree murder of Father Henry Tomei, and on December the 11th of 1973, his trial for this would begin. Now, Mullin, yet again, he didn't hide the fact that he had committed these murders, and he would plead guilty to the second-degree murder of Father Henry Tomei, and he would be sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, a doctor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, they would diagnose Herbert Mullin with schizophrenic reaction paranoid type. Now, if you're an OG here, you might remember when I covered Edmund Kemper, like way back in the day last year, I covered Edmund Kemper and we spoke about a guy who shared an adjoining cell with Edmund Kemper at one point. And you might remember Edmund Kemper said that he didn't like this particular man because he killed for no good reason, and also because this guy would sing whilst they were all trying to watch TV. This guy, the singer, the ill-mannered, killing for no good guy, was Herbert Mullin. This guy right here, Herbert and Edmund, they spent quite a lot of time together during their imprisonment, and at one point Edmund Kemper actually threw water over Herbert Mullin and told him to shut up whilst they were watching TV, and then from that moment forward, Herbert Mullin started to ask Edmund Kemper when he could and couldn't sing, and Edmund Kemper was rewarding this guy with peanuts. He was reinforcing good behaviour to teach Herbert Mullin how to act in public. But honestly, it's just insane to think that one killer to another killer can be in prison together and spend time with each other. Like, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind, to be honest. Then on August the 18th of 2022, Herbert Mullin, he would die at the age of 75 from natural causes whilst he was housed at the California healthcare facility, ultimately ending his reign of terror. He didn't reign for long, it was 4 months, but I mean, it was brutal. But at the end of this video, I still don't know how I feel. Like, was this guy driven purely by his mental illness, or was he using his mental illness as an excuse for what he was doing? Because he was covering things up. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He was trying to evade capture. And a lot of the times when he was murdering people, it was overkill. But again, I'm no expert when it comes to schizophrenia, and I'm sure a lot of you in the comments will know far more about it than I do, so please let me know down below what you think. But do we think this guy was a murderer because of his mental illness? Or was he using his mental illness as an excuse to allow him to kill? I don't know. For the first time, I don't know. I've been scared to call this guy a monster because, like, was he? I don't know. So for this case, I definitely need you to comment down below and let me know your thoughts, feelings and opinions, theories, because I'm stumped. I am stumped for the first time in my life. But my loves, that is it for today's true crime and makeup episode. I do really hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it was interesting for you. I hope it was something new. Again, apologies for the Chris Watts case. It was just a complete flop. I know like 90% of you prefer when I do unknown, lesser known cases. It's kind of why you came over to my channel. But I do like to honour everyone's request, and Chris Watts was so highly requested from the beginning. So I just wanted to make sure I covered that case for the people who did want it. If you enjoyed this video, before you go today, make sure you are subscribed, get that notification bell on, because I'm here for you twice a week, every single week, with a brand new interesting true crime case. Any details you need regarding me, myself and I, social media handles, case suggestion form, it is all listed down below, as is all the product details of what I've used on my face today, in case there is anything you would like to pick up. Don't forget your case suggestions can be left in the comments down below. I read every single one of the comments, and any suggestions that you've left, I have added them to my suggestion list, my document that I refer to. You can email me if you would prefer, that's listed down below, or you can send me a DM over on Instagram. I would just say if you DM me on Instagram, maybe leave a comment down below, because a lot of it does go into my requests, and I don't often check my requests because there's sugar daddies in there, there is princes wanting feet pics, and I just prefer not to wander in to my requests, to be honest. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!